I want to welcome Agile XRM to the podcast. I've known the people at Agile XRM for the past 12 years. I've seen how their business process management tool can add massive value to complex organizational processes in sectors such as finance and government. If you have complex processes or a need for dialogues on the Power Platform or Dynamics 365, take a look at how this BPM tool can add value. You can find them at agilexrm.com or check out the show notes for more details. Welcome to the Power Platform Show. Thanks for joining me today. I hope today's guest inspires and educates you on the possibilities of the Microsoft Power Platform. Now, let's get on with the show. Today's guests are from Finland. They both work at Ford Forever as Power Platform advisors. You can find links to their bio and social media, etc. in the show notes for this episode, as always. Welcome to the show, Antti and Jukka.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having us.
Good to have you on the show, gentlemen. Antti, I'll start with you.
All right.
Food, family, and fun. What do you do when you're not at, head down at Ford Forever or gallivanting around the world speaking at conferences as you do? What does food, family, and fun look like for you?
That's a great question. Food, family, and fun. Well, family takes a lot of my time. So we have a 1.5-year-old, which is consuming with our 2 other kids. So I've turned into, I'd say, a family man. So that's the bulk of my free time. Then, that love for Power Platform, whenever there's time, I try to keep up.
How?
How can I keep up?
And do you really
keep
up?
Keep up? I mean, it's
can I really keep up? Yeah. No, it's you have to pick your battles. Focus on what's interesting, and for me, and I think for you as well, governance has been interesting for the past couple of years. So trying to focus on what we do in our daily work, because you can't consume it all.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that stands out to me was I think I first met you in Sweden at one of the first, in a day events or Saturday type event that was happening there. And then we co-spoke in at the first Scottish Summit, which is where I saw your session then again. And you've always been very big on the project side of the BizApp suite. Are you still really committed to that space, or have you more transitioned into being a true blue Power Platform person?
I think that the project side is something that's always going to stick with me. So it's sort of I'd say partly that hobby side of these things, keeping up with where that is, and I try to do some advisory on that front. So not much implementing things, but really advising customers and partners on how that stuff works and how where that's going and how those components are implemented. So it's more on that side these days, I'd say.
Yeah, makes sense. Jukka, the last time I met you was in the Microsoft office in Sweden, which was a totally different event. And you were speaking then quite knowledgeably on, and heck, this must be 2019, maybe 2018, on, if I remember rightly, it was something like data, what was it? In Dynamics, the I can't even think what the term was. They'd brought out a whole bunch of back-end dashboards to kind of see around interactions and stuff that were happening. The word product insights jumps to mind, but it wasn't product insights, or products and insights never came to market. It was like customer insights. That's what it was back there, I think you were speaking on. You've obviously indexed heavily towards power as well. Before we go there, food, family, and fun for you, what does that mean?
Starting in food. So, I mean, all the people in the office know that when we go for lunch, I check out the place that has Salomon on the menu. That's what I always default into. And then in drink side, well, you know me, I'm a big craft beer fanatic, so off duty I'll always find the place that's going to be having the most exotic selection of new beers to try. Family-wise, so I've got a wife and a 3-year-old kid called Alex now, and so during this summer vacation time when spending days with him, I mean, he's growing up really fast and into big machines, so have a hard time keeping up with him, running behind him when he's pushing his plastic truck there in the in the parks, and like that's well, it keeps me healthy, keeps me one from drinking beer all day, all night on vacation time. So that's good stuff. And then the fun part. So I grew up as a 90s raver, so I'm still trying to keep up with that scene. So whenever I get a chance to escape the family and go out and spend the night in a dark room with loud music, then that's where I try to position myself into.
So that's EDM, isn't it? Is that the genre, EDM?
Well, yeah, but I mean, it wasn't called EDM back in the days. It was rave and techno and whatever.
Yeah.
When it all began.
Nice. I won't ask you about the substance that you need to take to kind of stay up and keep going at those type of events, and you know, being able to bounce all over the room with it. But yeah, I've always been impressed with the amount of craft beers that you seem to always be sampling, and the number of raves that you seem to be at, which seems to be a regular occurrence. For me, it doesn't seem to have knocked off. Do you ever get have people think that you look like any famous DJ?
They might mix me with Mark Smith, for example, with a hairstyle. If you're the MVP scene.
I was in the Philippines and someone thought, who is the DJ I'm thinking of that's he was big in the EDM scene for some time, particularly coming out of Ibiza.
Yeah, I'm looking at you right now with your glasses, and you look like Dave Seaman, who is a long-time DJ in the UK on the Booker's house scene. I mean, you're kind of spitting image of him at the moment.
Nice.
So just pick up some decks there in your studio and start doing a bit different kind of a
I've thought of getting
Twitch
decks
show or whatever.
Yeah, adding them to my bar, but it would be extravagant and beyond what I need. Tell me about, today I want to really talk to you about the Power Platform and governance. And the reason, we set up this podcast is because I know Microsoft have been getting the two of you to do a lot of educating of partners in Europe around this topic. When you look at pulling together what you're going to train on, what do you aim to cover? What do you aim to talk about?
Yeah, so if we think about the Power Platform governance in practice session that we've been doing in Microsoft offices around the Nordic countries, so it has really started from kind of like what is not actually explained in the official training courses, or that's kind of like this sort of tribal knowledge about what is this thing really about. So we've went pretty deep into the actual details of it, and also kind of like giving people a bit of a wake-up call on how this is different from Dynamics or different from Office or Azure, because we are then trying to really pull in a mixture of people who don't come from the traditional path of this application consulting. And that has really been the best part of those courses that we've done for Microsoft and for Arrow and these kind of partner-facing organizations. And we are more kind of like telling them what you need to sort of learn about, giving them hands-on examples and challenges about what the life at the customer organization can actually be like, because that is something that you can't really get exposed to that if you are working in the kind of traditional silo where you are a provider of a dynamic solution, for example, or if you come to do a Power App that uses Azure backend services. So those are just all like that single app kind of perspective is so different from the platform perspective. And that's what we will try to then sort of give people a way to experience that reality so that they could better understand that, okay, what is the life there on the customer organization side. And they may be figuring out that based on what we kind of now know from this, what kind of services could we offer to the customers, what kind of new competencies should our people be trained in, so that we are better equipped for then encountering that reality where there are multiple partners, and most of the apps also coming from non-partners.
Yeah.
So the internal system developers who are then kind of the real ingredient in the kind of low-code revolution. So getting the sort of perspective and kind of like maybe tips and tricks that are not going to be maybe that a bit like relevant more further down the road, but so that they know what's coming there, because that is really something that is not really very well visualized or expressed in any of the sort of official more product-based training courses that are available out there.
You raise an interesting point about the siloed, and being that all of us on the call today have all come from a very strong dynamic CRM type background originally. In that partners used to come into organizations and they would do a project and they would deliver a solution, and they might put some a support contract in post that event. But what I'm noticing is that more and more customers are wanting to have a much greater deal of skin in the game. They're not wanting the relationship to be with a partner. You come in, you do a bunch of stuff, and then you leave. They're really going, no, this is it's a journey that we're going on, and we need our staff to get up to speed, because and I use a kind of a 60-40 split. 60% are customer side involved in a project, 40% might be, and sometimes that's 80-20, it changes, but our goal from a partner perspective is always to be bringing the skill level, the digital literacy of that organization up so that they can self-govern, self-manage, because, it's only there that the Power Platform truly spreads out in an organization, right? They've got to own it. It's got to be their journey, not a partner-imposed journey. What are you noticing around where you're perhaps going in and doing rescues, right? You're coming in after maybe other partners are being involved, or you are really getting that governance strategy in place for an organization. What does good look like? What do you look at from a baseline? And then where do you like to kind of leave them? And you talked about tips and tricks for, hey, this is going to come down the road. Once you're this size, once these things happen, you're going to be here. You need to be aware of this. What's that process for you? How do you take a customer through that journey, whether it's a rescue or whether it's a brand new implementation, and you're setting the vision for the Power Platform?
Yeah, so we've recently been kind of workshopping this internally together with Antti and other members in the team. And our offering is starting to be divided kind of into two levels. So we are going to need these kind of public or semi-public courses that are like the ones that we've been promoting there in social media, those ones that are paid by Microsoft for partners. So the ones that are not customer specific. And then there's, of course, the layer beneath that, which is going to be something that we do behind closed doors with the customers. But those really need to go sort of hand in hand. It's hard to really do it just as a consulting or advisory engagement, or then purely through the kind of running these courses and doing it in a way that's kind of doesn't involve any of the details that are specific to the organization that we're talking with. And what we recommend as the path, and which we've been following with customers with, I'd say, very successfully in raising their kind of maturity level in adopting the platform. So we always have to start with the current state analysis of what their current use of Power Platform is there in the organization. And that will then involve also identifying the other partners that are part of that game, who has been building apps for them, be it in Dynamics or then pure Power Apps in the Office side, or something that's kind of spiked by Azure but running still largely on the low-code platform side. So really going through that analysis using the COS target tools for digging out all the information that the customer doesn't really have any visibility into before we go there. So even if they would have deployed COS target on their own, then they can't really figure out like how to make use of all the pieces of information that they get on the dashboard. So like what to pay attention to, what does it mean? So that's where we really need to spend a few days initially and like get people around the same table there and gather data, and even at that point start benchmarking them against like what are sort of like key items to really fix, what fires should be put out first, but also then kind of looking into the future about what could be valuable or relevant for them in like 1 or 2 years' time. Putting it all out there sort of at once, but not going into too much detail yet, but sort of building up the sort of case for why you need governance to begin with. Of course, they need to have that on some level that's understanding that they need us before we get to do the work for them, but still usually it's that has to be done before there's any kind of like path to be built forward about what piece of the puzzle are they going to be laid out there in the coming months. And then after that, we then usually always recommend that we then do training about sort of the more theoretical part of the platform, how it works. So looking at the environments, looking at Power Apps, admin and governance in practice, Power Automate, same stuff, licensing, environment strategy, and like security, DLPs and all that. So going through the sort of capabilities that are there in theory in the platform, which you will then be using in the near future, well, which are still something that you cannot like start using today because you don't know the combination or the priority of those things. And from there, we then can proceed to build actually the governance framework for what work they're going to be actually doing within the organization. After there's the understanding of who are the people and apps and solutions partners involved here, and then what is sort of the theoretical building blocks of the platform, and then what are the kind of like ability and scope and needs for you to like, what should you do within the next 6 months' time? I think that's kind of like the high level, the model, how we proceed with customers today, regardless of whether it's like a net new kind of environment or sort of a new territory for us, or whether we got then try to rescue them from some prior failed attempt with another partner to kind of do something on the governance side.
You know, oftentimes when you're starting to work with a customer, you'll ask them around, you know, is the Power Platform in use? And you'll get a mixed range of answers. Nah, nobody's doing anything, nothing's happening. Or you know, one big project doing at the moment for an airline. Oh yeah, we've installed the COE starter kit, but nobody knows what it means. We just had our tech company install it, and it's in there, so we're set up, we're good. And when you ask things like, you know, how many apps do you have? How many automations are underway? Like all this, it's kind of like no idea. When you first get into somebody's system and they say, and you want to get a lay of the land, in the COE starter kit, what are the kind of first 3 to 5 dashboards that you want to get and understand the truth of what's going on in that tenant?
How bad is life in default?
Yes. It's funny you say that. I was just talking to a Microsoft PM, and they were saying they've now set up a dedicated team to deal with their default story going forward and plan. It's a dedicated team now in Microsoft. Go for it, Antti.
So I think this is probably something that depends on who's looking at the platform and what people find as I'd say actually as personal points of interest. Personally, what I try to look at, you know, the first couple of things are, you know, where's our capacity at? You know, what are our current capabilities and our, you know, theoretical capabilities from just a capacity point of view.
So you're talking about storage?
Yeah, storage basically. You know, where can we go? Where can we go? How do our licenses look like? And from there, I mean, I personally, I do look at default and try to analyze how bad does it look. You know, do we have custom connectors, unwanted connectors in use, you know, in broad use by anyone? Do we have any DLP policies? Do we have possibilities of data leaking out? Those are sort of the initial things that I try to get an understanding of, because, you know, the plethora of environments that usually exist, that takes a lot of time to go and you know, dig those out and dig for information, what's going on there. Usually it is default. That's the root of all evil. So that's sort of the, at least for me, the logical place to start and try to get, you know, my bearings on what the world looks like in there.
Mm.
And also, when you talk about capacity, then one aspect that's not part of the COA strategy, but so the PPAC dashboard is the consumption of the API requests, which is going to be a good indicator of what's really running in there.
Yeah.
And then in the near or distant future, actual problem for customers who are going over their entitlement limits. So that is, again, something that's they've always had access to it in theory, technically, but they don't understand why to look for it and what does it mean. So another great example of like data that's sort of hidden in plain sight, but so you need to sort of decipher that to the customers and explain that this actually, it will tell you also where the potential real kind of value is derived from the platform, but then also the places where people need guidance or where you have fires burning and you need to put them out before you proceed to any fancier models around your governance processes.
Yeah. What about ALM maturity? Because of low code, being marketed so heavily, and the concept of citizen developers being able to build anything, on the platform, rigor that you would have in traditional software development is sometimes a miss or a awry, that it's not in play.
What do you mean sometimes?
Yeah. So what are you coming across? What are you seeing, and what are your recommendations?
Oof, yeah. ALM, that's always the tough question. Sometimes it's tough even when you do dynamics, which is sometimes a bit surprising. There is no ALM in citizen development in organizations that are just getting started with Power Platform. Those organizations that are on a maturity level of 100 or 200, usually those cases that we actually have, those customers that are in the early steps, in the early stages, there's not a concept of ALM, nothing. And I know that someone who's listening might be like, hey, but man, that's not true. That's not what we're seeing, and that is definitely a possibility. So based on what I've extensively talked with people around the world, I think this is partly a cultural thing of sorts as well. But what we're seeing here, at least in Finland, with our enterprise, is that they are really in baby steps. They're taking baby steps, and the experience that we've had is there is no concept of ALM. ALM means that citizen developers are building their apps and their flows and whatnot directly in default, and those apps and flows, they might be personal productivity, they might be organizational productivity that are business critical apps and flows, and ALM. That's something that comes in as the organization matures, and as we get that governance framework in, and as we get to teach and train and enable not only IT but makers as well on what good ALM should look like. And really, then that's after that, that's then the discussion of how do we implement ALM, what sort of the initial versions and approaches and baby steps of ALM should we do things manually? Should we have automations in place? But that discussion, that's something that does come down the line when the bits and pieces for governing the platform are really in place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I really think you need to find some example of a fire that's burning or something that's obviously not going to scale, and then use that as talk around that scenario, find out, okay, where should this be running? Who's supporting it? Do you have any versioning? Is there any way to test it? So pick a few of these a bit bigger applications that are to some level critical or even high critical if they have been using them for many years already without knowing that it's not really in line with how things should be built. So then not kind of like overwhelming then with the sort of theory about all the hundreds of new apps that you will be producing like every year, but rather focusing on a few of these and then talking through the story aligned with this sort of theory of the governance tools that we talked about on the training side in our offering. So looking at the environment strategy, what environment should we build for these apps? Where should it land into? What other resources are needed for it? And thinking about then security perspectives. So based on the DLP policies that we define for default, for example, then does this fit into that? Does it need to be moved out? And that's again a great example of why it takes time to really put anything major into use, is that there's so much stuff that we need to clean out from the default or other places before we can enable the DLP policies and block things that need to be blocked. So then that will then, of course, quickly lead to questions about, okay, who built this? Is he in the house anymore? Is he a partner that's gone away? Or do we have any reasons to actually do the work there? So we can run into those kind of questions pretty soon in the analysis. And we have to kind of accept the fact that that's how it's going to go. It's going to go through these examples, and we cannot blame the customer or even the partners who might have been involved in building those solutions about doing things the wrong way. But we need to map out those steps that are so interconnected with one another, and kind of reaching the good ALM sort of capability alongside is sort of I'd say a side effect of putting the governance model in place there. So I think it's even actually a lot more motivating, especially for what the IT folks look at from that perspective, not from the sort of developer productivity perspective, but rather ensuring that things are under control and that people are not misusing our capacity or exposing data in unapproved ways to the end users. Those are very concrete things to kind of give out as the outcomes from that. And once you get through that process, then you are already in a pretty good state to start automating things in the ALM, in your ALM sort of maturity journey.
Mm-hmm. What's your experience like with managed environments and it's a whole new set of tools that Microsoft are bringing to the fore, and they're pretty compelling to give a much higher degree of governance. I was talking to Keith Watling, and he said, managed environments, you can pretty much save an FTE, inside the organization from a monitoring perspective and admin with the power that you get with managed environments. What's your experience? What are your thoughts, and where are you seeing it working well?
So if we think about this on a high level, I think it's very important that there's now an actual sort of a unit within the product team that is really building product features for those kind of things, so that we're not just relying on the C-Waste target elements that are distributed there in GitHub and are sort of non-products, even though they are the foundation for all the governance stuff today in the real world. So kind of having a way that these R&D investments can actually then bring in new revenue for Microsoft, that's a very positive thing for all of us. I mean, customers, partners, and Microsoft. So there's a reason to build the more advanced governance tooling into the actual product itself. Now, if we look at it then today, the state of sort of the offering from that has been shipped out from that R&D shop. So we, of course, pipelines are probably the most concrete and interesting feature that sort of addresses the very big need for having some in-product ALM capabilities to at some point to reach a state where also citizen devs can do proper ALM. It's a really big thing, and it probably would exist even if there was no product offering called managed environments in the suite. But then in practice, it's I see it as today the managed environments don't yet replace anything existing. So it's net new layers there that are going to be useful once the maturity of the organization grows higher, and we can start to use these more structured kind of processes for how we direct people to build in the right environments, and how to get them to deploy things in a automated way. But it's still something that it's not addressing the needs for the pro devs. It's not going to replace immediately, at least, Azure DevOps pipelines and all those tooling that are more customizable. So the pro coders are not going to rush into adapting that. And then for the citizen side, then it takes a you have to have the basic governance model in place before you are mature enough to start using the pipelines, for example. So putting those into use in these sort of citizen environments, citizen sandbox and all those places. So yeah, I mean, it's obvious that we need those features, and we need the better reporting in the products as well. I mean, there's no reason why the COE Startup dashboards can show data that's missing from the products admin portals. I mean, it doesn't make any business sense for Microsoft either. It's just been the way that by being not in the product, they've been able to move faster in the series target. So the agility has been there, and I think is going to be the state of things going forward as well. So new things will be still experimented there outside the product, and eventually they will be sort of assimilated into the managed environments feature set, at which point in time will probably become very beneficial for customers and worth the money, worth the premium licenses. But are we there today yet? Well, it's not a thing to replace another thing at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Your favorite topic, licensing.
It's perfect, right?
Have you, what are your thoughts on it? We're at the state of play, for those people that traditionally have defaulted to using SharePoint as their back-end systems, often say it's because of licensing costs. And then those of us that, of course, come from a model-driven world think the licensing is pretty cheap compared to what we used to pay for an XRM solution in Dynamics in the past, right? And so what are your thoughts on licensing in the state of play? I know this won't age well, but at the state of play right now, what are your thoughts?
Well, like you said, it's once you understand what you get with the money, then it's really dirt cheap. But then we come to the fact that is the organization broadly mature enough to make use of the premium capabilities yet, which gets us to the issue with how the managed environments feature is delivered. So it's not a separate SKU of itself. It's based on the per user model, which of course is always going to be then a source of frustration for people who are more aligned towards the Azure custom dev way of paying for the developers and not paying for the actual platform for every user.
Yeah.
But then I don't see that as a blocker for the commercial success or the broader adoption of platform tools really at all. It's going to happen same way as SharePoint happened. It's just a matter of time, I think. But what really is then maybe, a bigger concern there, once we do see that there are bigger low-code apps, not Dynamics apps, not LOE stuff, but custom apps built on the platform, and we have to start thinking about the capacity consumption side of it. So thinking about then the API calls and the storage and all that pricing, and especially, do we build the automations in Flow, or should we take the logic apps, and what's going to be the cost impact when we are doing really big things on the platform?
Yeah. So
it's been such a long time since the kind of the intent, the new model behind how the platform is licensed, how the resources can be consumed. It was announced almost probably 4 years ago by the time this podcast goes out. And we still don't have a way to really look at the consumption via the reports in the product, or even then assign resources to the right things that are operating there on the platform. And that is going to be a concern for the IT side once they see that this is a platform for every developer, and yet we cannot really then properly control that where do the resources go to that we pay for. So everybody hates surprises, and it's as I understand why it's really technically challenging for Microsoft to build those sort of dashboards and get the metrics in place to be detailed enough so that they can base their financial transactions on it. It's a very hard problem to solve, I'm sure, but kind of the communication around that is starting to be a really big sort of drawback for the low-code platform compared to then doing it the Azure way, I think.
So just one comment on licensing from what we've seen with customers. Licensing is premium licenses are a result of increased maturity in Power Platform. That's what we're essentially seeing. If you think of customers that are totally unaware of what they have on the platform, they really don't know why someone should have license X, Y, or Z, related to Power Apps and Flow. When we start talking about the basic moving parts and how the platform works and kind of putting in those initial frameworks in place for governance, as the awareness increases, sort of the licensing discussion immediately gets a lot easier. That kind of stage gate of how do we assign licenses, premium licenses, who gets them, who doesn't get them, that gets easier as we move along. So I think that's one, like Jukka said, that managed environments, that's sort of down the line when we have the basic building blocks. I think part of that is because that whole licensing scenario is a result of proper governance work and increased awareness, at a customer.
Nice. So true. Final question for both of you, and I want both of you to answer this question, is, Antti, we'll start with you, is give me 2 ways that you're practically using AI that you weren't doing in October last year.
I am trying to get emails to write themselves without having to spend 30 minutes on how do I reply to a customer. That's sort of that's where I want to save time personally.
Nice.
I suck at it right now, but ask me in 6 months, maybe I'll be better.
Cool. I'll be keen to see that. Jukka?
Yeah, so I've been applying the big check capabilities quite a lot into the marketing content that I'm partially responsible for at Forever, and it's I'm not going to use it to replace my personal blogging content, but kind of like the way how it can provide structure into things that are still draft and like give you variations of what could be a better way to express yourself, then using that to like sort of especially accelerate people who are not doing that kind of things on a daily basis, who are occasional bloggers who are like technical pros who have the information there and want to like put it out there, but don't have a yet like understanding of like what would be a good way to format that into a readable blog post. Then those tools are excellent for getting that kind of ideas. And then I've also been playing around with some of the AI image tools, how to sort of alter the reality and like how to sort of like accepting the fact that what you see online is never going to be real again. Yeah. So why should we like pretend that it has to be just real photos and real things of like what goes on there in the applications?
What's the tools that you've played with? What's your favorite?
Right now, I love using the Wombo AI app on my phone because it's so easy to then like
is that one blow?
Use it for no, Wombo. WOMBO.
Okay.
Wombo.ai.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's great for like take this image and use the inspiration and then create a new version of it based on some like steampunk or whatever.
Yes. No, very good, because I've been impressed with what you've come out with, particularly your MVP award that kind of looks semi-awardish, and I've been doing a whole bunch of that type of thing using Mid-Journey. I've got but as in it's abstract art, and it doesn't really like taking well, it can, but it doesn't. Well, I have not used it effectively. Like if I put a photo of me up and got it re-rendered, it wouldn't look like me, right? It seems to be quite different.
Which is a good thing, right?
Yeah. Stable Diffusion, though, now that's got me interested because that runs locally, and I think you get a lot more. It's a lot more setup, right? You're going to know a bit your way around GitHub, making sure you're on the latest build. Takes about 2 gig of storage or something like that, maybe 8 gig actually. But some really amazing stuff happening in that space. It's exciting times. I think all my tweets now for this podcast since January have all been written via GPT, and they are much better tweets because what I do is I hand in the entire transcript from the podcast and then go create me, 5 tweets for across 5 days. And the thing is, the tweets are meaningful about the content in the podcast. I had this one as an MVP that I was interviewing, and she came back and goes, I never talked about Raspberry Pi. Why in your tweet do you say I did Raspberry Pi? And then before I could respond, she came back and was like, oh my gosh, I did reference Raspberry Pi in my, she goes, I re-listened to the podcast and I did mention it. And of course, it had extracted that and talked about her comment on it. And so I've found it's definitely made the tweeting much more accurate to the show because it's not making anything up, right? It's actually using the transcript. And then the other thing, and I've just switched this on actually last night, is I've been doing transcripts for some time, and they're kind of an overhead to do on a podcast, right? So it costs more. It can look crappy, as in sometimes it's just not accurate. But I just switched on one with my platform last night, which is using generative AI to do the transcript rather than the old way transcripts used to be done. So I'm going to be really interested to see if there's a big uptick in the quality of transcription now coming out. I don't know how many people ever look at the transcripts on a podcast. I assume it's more for people that, need a specialized reader or something like that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting.
I was looking at them just before this show here.
Yeah.
Seeing the latest guests on your...
Yeah.
I mean, because I don't have time to listen to the audio, but I can scan through some topics that being talked there. So definitely there's so much value to be gained from that.
Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
It's awesome to be here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. Always good to be on.
Hey, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Business Application MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 Guy. If there's a guest you'd like to see on the show, please message me on LinkedIn. If you want to be a supporter of the show, please check out buymeacoffee.com/NZ365Guy. Stay safe out there and shoot for the stars.